Hi, Beck here. Welcome to this overview of 4 key inquiry components that will help make your inquiry learning purposeful and will therefore make it more engaging and meaningful for your learners. So here we go. The 4 components we'll talk about today are purpose, discover facts, think deeply, and so what. These are key to effective inquiry, and learners will dip in and out of them at different points, depending on the nature of their inquiry. As you know, all inquiry journeys can take different paths, so it's not a process to follow, just key aspects to ensure are features of your inquiry. It's based on the 7 component model, which includes how we activate or engage learners, the culture we create, and the competencies we integrate into the inquiry. But for today, we'll look at the 4 essentials. Getting these 4 going is the first step in creating more purposeful inquiry in your class. Let's take a look. The first one is purpose. This is where students identify a meaningful purpose they can work towards, giving them a clear direction for their inquiry. The next one is discover facts. This component involves learners identifying what they'll need to know in order to meet their purpose and how they'll find, assess, comprehend and confirm, take notes and synthesize information, which conveniently forms the acronym FACTS. The third one is think deeply, where we guide learners through a deep thinking strategy until they're more independent with it at least, to ensure a worthwhile outcome. Finally, we have so what. This is where students consider what they could do with what they've come up with. Where could they take it now? Now let's take a look at each one in detail, what it involves, and why it's so important for purposeful inquiry. First up, and obviously an important one as its name's included in the title, is purpose. This is where we work with students to identify a meaningful, worthwhile purpose to work toward. I get teachers to get their students to work from just 3 for a start. There are more, but by limiting it to 3, we can get them out of research and regurgitate mode, if that's their typical mindset for inquiry, and have them operating at some of the higher levels of creative and critical thinking. The 3 to begin with are solve problems, innovate or create, and judge or decide. Without having a clear purpose for inquiry, some of the inquiry journeys can be quite low level and basically just some research represented in a different format. And we'd be missing a great opportunity to develop those lifelong skills of problem solving, creativity, and critical thinking. Without purpose, inquiry can be a bit fluffy and meaningless. The learners don't even know why they're doing it. Sometimes learners choose topics they already know about, and if there's no purpose, there'll often be no new learning either. Sometimes what is often called passion projects, if they don't have a purpose, they can end up being centred around what the individual wants for themselves and won't necessarily benefit anyone else either. While this is okay at times, we also want people to be thinking about how they can make a bigger difference or contribution. In the real world, we most often have a purpose, reason, or end point that we're after. If we want to renovate our house, that's our purpose and we do the research and thinking for it. If we want to decide to join a new club, that's our purpose and we find out about and think deeply about that decision. So having a purpose for in-school inquiry makes it work like it does out of school, giving us the best chance of learners transferring their learning into their lives. In summary, then, without having a clear purpose for the inquiry, it can be limited to research and regurgitation, meaningless, and not necessarily offer learners anything valuable now or in their future. Safe to say, having a purpose is the key to having purposeful inquiry. The next essential component for purposeful inquiry is discover facts. Learners need to think about what they need to know in order to meet their purpose, giving it much more clarity and narrowing it down substantially for them. Then they will think about how they'll find it out. The acronym FACTS works well here as it is an easy to remember research process for learners. They find sources of information, assess them for reliability, comprehend and confirm the facts, take notes, and synthesize information by thinking about how they'll use it to meet their purpose. Without this component, some learners just ask questions because they think they're supposed to, and these typically end up being a list of questions on the topic, but not for a purpose. If learners don't discover new facts, they won't learn anything new. They'll use what they already know or think they know. Without it, the skills to be a critical researcher won't have a chance to develop, and learners will end up basing their project on inaccurate information. And finally, if carefully planned research isn't part of inquiry, learners won't get to develop their ability to use information for a purpose, which is a hugely valuable capability for today's learners. Now, the third essential part is think deeply. This is often a key part that is missing in many inquiry journeys. It can be a hard sell to learners too, as deep thinking can be hard work, but long-term and short-term results are well worth it. Thinking deeply involves learners thinking about the types of thinking they'll need to do to meet their purpose and the specific step-by-step deep thinking strategy they'll use to come up with something effective and worthwhile. These strategies will have been taught explicitly to learners first, and I use a little framework of thinking characters that you can see here, and it works really well, especially for our younger learners. Now, there are some quite considerable effects if deep thinking isn't present in our inquiry program. Without it, some learners often just hurry their way through and end up with something that is low level, ineffective, or irrelevant. For example, they come up with solutions that are already in place, or innovations that won't meet the need that they're actually designed for. Sometimes they'll focus on what they think would be a cool end product or what they think already, rather than what's best for the purpose. In this case, their thinking doesn't change and new learning is limited. If learners don't think deeply, they won't get a great chance to develop important qualities like persistence, resilience, and determination because thinking can be hard work. But coming up with solutions, innovations, and well thought out decisions is hard work. If it was easy, we wouldn't have nearly as many problems and issues in the world as we do. And finally, without this component in your inquiry, we're missing a fantastic opportunity to teach our learners valuable thinking skills and strategies that will help them now and in the future. The final component that helps to make inquiry purposeful is having a so what, which is like a what's next. You've done all of this, so what? What was it for? What could you do with it now? For example, if they've come up with an effective solution, innovation, or decision, someone would be interested in hearing about it. Or perhaps something further could be done to implement it, or package it, or get it recorded, or build it, etc. So an entirely new purpose can come from the original one. Hence the image with the koru being connected back to the purpose. If we don't have a so what in our inquiry, some learners won't learn how to communicate their own ideas for a specific audience and purpose, or they won't see that what they've done is relevant and meaningful. Having a so what helps learners appreciate that inquiry isn't linear and can go back and forth among the components. They'll see the components as linked, just not necessarily in one direction. And last but not least, without a so what, learners won't get to deepen their learning as they take it even further. So that's an outline of the 4 essential parts: having a purpose, discovering facts needed to meet that purpose, thinking deeply to ensure effective results, and a so what to take the learning even further. If you'd like further information on how I can help you implement purposeful inquiry in your school, or any of the other 9 pieces of the Agency for Deeper Learning puzzle outlined here, flick me an email at beck@idealeducation.nz or visit my website becksteacherstoolbox.co.nz. Mā te wā.